Hey, welcome back to Booth Bastards. My overlay is working today, for now. Anyway, tonight we have a special guest. Daniel and I will be interviewing the illustrator, the artist, the designer of men's neckwear, Cody Vrosh.
Hello.
So he's not on camera yet, but he'll say hello regardless because he doesn't like to follow decorum. Before we get to him, we do have, of course, my partner in this endeavor. We have Daniel is on the line.
Hello, and Cody Bastard. Welcome to Booth Bastards.
And now Cody's on the camera.
I know. He's back. He's here. So hello. Say hello, Cody.
Hi. How's it going?
Man, you know.
Hello.
I'm figuring out Hangouts. I don't use this that much, so I'm like, all right. So
Well,
now I'm on camera. All right.
Neither do we, obviously. So
But
we were of zero help tonight in helping you. Normally, we can help people in the pre-show of getting their stuff. We did absolutely nothing. Daniel and I just quietly stared at our screens.
You gave me time. You gave me time, which is the most important thing of all.
That is something that we definitely can throw at
thank you, gentlemen. But thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. We've
Glad
been
to be here.
Yeah, we've been doing shows together for like 3 years now, I think.
Yeah, I've watched a few. Well, I've watched a few minutes and listened to several.
Well, not these shows. I mean, like doing Comic Cons and that sort of thing.
Comic shows.
So it's
been a while that I've known you guys from the shows. Yes.
Yeah. So the funny thing here is, I've been using this show as a way to learn more about the artists that that we do these shows with. Except for you, we've actually been doing shows and hanging out together. So it almost feels like it's backwards now. Like you were on a panel last week with us, but we've been going to dinner at shows and hanging out at shows for a while. So I kind of feel like I already know him. So I'm not like the questions usually it's like, so what do you do? But tonight it's almost like another hangout.
You've seen me.
Yes. Yeah. So let's start with the background stuff.
All right.
Do you want a question?
Well,
the background stuff. All right. My name is Cody Vrosh. I am a Northern California artist and illustrator. I'm head designer and co-owner of Binary Winter Press, and we make shirts and ties and books. And so it's a house full of art and stories, and yeah, it's we're in it for the creation. And, yeah.
I remember when I first I saw you for a good, I think a good 2 years on the circuit before I ever said hello to you. I think we rubbed shoulders at like Ape and a variety of places.
I think we first met you at WonderCon, and because we were living in San Francisco at the time, and
WonderCon. Go ahead.
Yeah, and we came up to you, and you had this tiny little booth, so that's like historic, but you were doing digital stuff, but then using overlays for texture.
Yeah.
So you had like old paper textures and parchment textures and stuff like that, and me and Cecil talked to you and Donna about how neat that was, and then I don't think we talked for a year, and then we started with conventions, and I didn't even remember that. Cecil actually mentioned that, but.
That must have been WonderCon 1966.
Yeah, I think so. 1842. WonderCon.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I just remember I saw this. There's this punky artist guy who was a young fella. It was you, and you were at the cons. I'm like, hey, there's that punky guy again. I wonder if he's nice. And it turns out you were pretty nice.
It's debatable.
I know.
I try to be friendly.
You try.
For appearances.
So have you? So a quick question. So how long have you been doing shows?
So we did our very first Comic-Con in 2007, and it was just like a table with a big stack of books. It was our very first book, The Irrelevant Redemption, and Cecil wrote it and I illustrated it. And we got into small press and kind of we'd been to Comic-Con before, but didn't know like the true tidal wave of what exhibiting at Comic-Con was like. And so we came in there like with a sheet as a tablecloth and a stack of books and I think like 2 shirts. And it's pretty much been every show we can get our hands on since then. But it's such an amazing experience. It's so much fun just to they're so much fun to be at, but then actually be a part of them and be able to interact with people that enjoy what you're doing is a really amazing experience.
Yeah, awesome. Have you been doing like how long until you did ties?
Ties, we did that. I screen printed our first tie for our wedding in 2000. I think it's 2009, but I feel like that's so long ago. But it is. Yeah, that's right. No, we screen printed our first ties for our wedding, and then it was fun and neat, and it's hard to find good ties, and so then we started making more, and they're really fun to design for, and they're really fun to screen print, and the reaction to be able to give people cool ties is really nice because ties are typically pretty awful.
Yeah.
That was actually what caught my eye. I mean, I love your illustration, but when you're walking running back and forth between the restroom and your booth, and you only get pause to look at one thing as you're running back and forth, it was the ties that really grabbed my attention. Obviously, I lean towards the fashion design end of things, but it was the illustration quality on the ties, and I loved the way that you. It's one of the things that I find interesting working like I do with hats is that you're either doing a graphic and putting it on a hat, or you're designing a hat. There's like this balance between the two, where you're working with the medium and in its application, or you're creating artwork and then you're also applying it to something. And I love the way that you dance between those two things, because obviously the tie gives you its parameters that you're kind of stuck with, and there's a lot going on with a tie that a typical artist wouldn't think of when they're just slapping graphics on a tie. But at the same time, the techniques that you use in printing them is very like pen and ink vibe, and I love that it feels like it's a pen and ink drawing that happens to be a tie, yet when you actually are wearing them, they're clearly engineered to be worn.
Well, thank you. That's exactly what I was going for, actually. I find a lot of apparel design, as you say, like especially when it comes to, like most T-shirts are either like jokes, or you can get like nice artistic T-shirts, but it's a square image placed on a T-shirt, and it's not taking into account the shape of the shirt. And ties. Originally, when I first started doing it, I would just like do a drawing and be like, "This would look good on a tie, sure," and like try to slap it on, and it wouldn't function at all like that. So I started. And I'm sure like with fezzes, you put an image on there at some point and it's like stretched and wrapped and you're like, this doesn't even look like the right thing anymore. So I kind of had to adjust my thinking to just doing very, very long illustrations. And the idea generally is not for it to be like, a neat or funny tie, but to be art on a piece of apparel,
So do you have a tie? Do you have a tie-shaped sketchbook?
Go ahead, Daniel.
You bastard! You have a tie-shaped sketchbook.
I have little what are they called?
I think you just pimped his next Kickstarter is the problem here.
What's that?
I said I think Daniel just pimped your next Kickstarter.
There we go. Tie-shaped sketchbooks. I have stencils for it so that I can make. Yeah, because I've done that before where they're like an inch too wide or 2 inches too short, and messes up the whole thing.
I really like your artwork. I don't know if I've ever told you that. I think your artwork is awesome. I really enjoy what you do. I think your skill and quality is awesome. What are some of the kinds of things that inspire you? I know you've got some gas masky, cyberpunky sort of women's. You do a lot.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Hey, I like your art. I know I've never said so, because I feel like at conventions we start talking to each other because we like each other's artwork, but we never actually talk about anything. So I like what you guys do too. It's like a strange, weird topic that never comes up ever again. You can walk up and say, "I like your artwork," and then we never speak of it again.
Right.
It's true. Yeah, it's really true.
As far as inspiration goes, I mean. I find the world in itself pretty fascinating. So if you keep your eyes open, you can see a lot of just insane things that are kind of taken advantage of, that are not really looked at as artistically inspiring. But what I look for inspiration, I mean, we watch and read a lot of sci-fi, but then nature documentaries constantly watching nature documentaries. So, you know, in my work, you see a lot of, it's like android girls or apocalyptic girls, a lot of just strong women characters, and then a lot of cryptozoology, I'd say, which is all like looking at just the animal kingdom and how incredibly insane every single, you know, inch of it is, and then, you know, reinterpreting that to, I guess, the animal kingdom in my mind.
Awesome.
That does seem to be kind of a common theme throughout our artwork, is the cryptozoology.
Yeah.
Because it's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just so insane. I've been watching Wildest Indochina, and it's a, you know, they're incredible documentaries, but just the animals that they go to, you know, they'll go to like Vietnam and just visit like strange gibbons and just like the most insane little animals that all interact with each other. And so I feel like in a lot of ways, cryptozoologies, you couldn't invent creatures that are weirder than the creatures that are already existing. So we take some liberties, but there's already enough weird crap. We probably could. You know, I've drawn creatures before that I'm like, this is a weird magical fake creature, and then 2 weeks later I see a document, I'm like, oh, that's a tapir. All right, okay, no, that's a real thing.
So I believe that aliens are already here. It's just that they're already here, right? So the jellyfish and stuff were in space, and I think. But you know, I think you're right. You know, these weird things. If these things were to be discovered in space, we'd all flip out. But like you said, they're in our backyard already.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you see this on like, you know, like a new species of crab, and you're like, have you seen crabs? There's like 50 species, and they're all totally insane.
Yeah.
Like, this new one's insane too, but they're all crazy.
We went to on the way back from I don't know, Utah or some damn place. Yeah, Utah. We stopped at a national park that is all like a dinosaur dig in New Mexico, and it's awesome. And basically, they were digging up and saying, yeah, we've discovered like, 80% of what we dig is new. And basically, they're like, yeah, check out all the Triceratops variations that we've dug up here, that we've discovered at this one location. Because you've got Triceratops, you know, don't just have the plate, but they've got the horns. They've got the hole with the horns. They've got, you know, all this crazy stuff going on. It's like that.
Huh. And see, so you just got to take like the Greek method and put a Triceratops head in a monkey body, and then make her grab onto a robotic girl with a gas mask, and you've got a Cody Vrosh.
Oh, money!
Yeah.
We figured out the equation.
Yeah.
Finally.
Well, I mean, a lot of my ideas come. So no matter what I'm working on, I try to set aside an hour every night where I go to bed just slightly early. And for years it's been I watch an episode or two of Star Trek, but I just finished every Star Trek ever, so now I'm on Farscape. And now I'm on audiobooks too. I'm listening to a lot of audiobooks, Stephen Bruce and some China Mobile. But during that hour, I can draw anything I want. And usually by that time, I'm a little sleepy, so sometimes it'll be like these delirious ramblings on paper. And so I imagine it's, you know, kind of the equivalent of like the drunken author at, 4 a.m. typing, just stream of consciousness prose. That it's kind of like stream of consciousness drawing, where a lot of it doesn't make sense, but then it's just kind of chunks of your subconscious working itself out. And I guess, yeah, I suppose in my subconscious there's a lot of apocalypse and weird animals like that.
Speaking of that, optimist or pessimist?
Optimist. 100% optimist.
Whoa.
I think that we are in the best time ever in human history. I think the world is only getting, I think ever. I think the world is only getting better. We are living at this amazing time period where everything is changing. We are living in the paradigm shift, which with I mean it's an oversimplification to say like the internet changed things, but but just with the shifting nature of how people react to each other and how, we're at the precipice of artificial intelligence and the precipice of curing all disease, and there's geniuses right now that believe that we may be able to upload ourselves, or like longevity technologies that may mean we never die. I mean, it all sounds like complete insane nonsense, but it was insane nonsense like 50 years ago, and now you're like, well, maybe, I guess that's possible. And in 20 years from now, who knows? I mean, when I was a little kid, if you were to tell me that someday I'll have the entire breadth of human knowledge in my pocket, accessible at all times, I would think that's ridiculous. And yet, here we are.
So you're not a prepper.
Optimist.
So you're not a prepper?
Doomsday prepper? It's possible. It's possible. I keep a lot of water around just in case, but I mean, there's certain things that could happen, but for the most part, I'd say we've reached a point where, I think we're doing all right.
All right.
Yeah.
I feel better, man. How about you, Jason? You feel better? Woo!
Now I'm starting to wonder, like, if we were to ask, like, if you were to survey artists at a Comic-Con, whether they were pessimists or optimists, I'm starting to feel that Cody might be a little fringe.
He's a fringe, yes.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think it's like human nature to be like, nah, not like it was,
Yeah.
And you bitch about how art, the art scene in the 80s, that's the art scene I would have been. Music wasn't like what it was in the 90s, and, humans weren't how they are. America wasn't like it was in the 50s. And things change, yes, but for the most part, like I have access to any type of genre of music I could possibly imagine wanting access to. And that in itself right there is better than the four cassettes that I had when I was a kid. I had like Lita Ford, Guns N' Roses, and Bon Jovi and Cinderella tape. And I just like listened to those over and over and over and over again. And that's all the music I ever heard. That's true. But I don't know Cinderella, man. Ozzy Osbourne and Lita Ford on If I Can Close My Eyes Forever. That's some good shit.
That's good stuff. Hey, what did I hear you say? China Mayville?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite China Mayville book? I love that guy.
Perdido is probably. I'm listening to the audiobook for Unmunden right now, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, Perdido has a great ending, and anyway, it's awesome stuff. The Kraken's pretty awesome too.
Yeah, I read that. Yeah, so I've been reading a lot of comics lately. So I've been letting my my enjoyment of word books slip. But I just discovered how amazing audiobooks are now. So I can draw and listen to audiobooks at the same time, and it's great. It's fantastic. Best Served Cold, amazing audiobook. World War Z, they're incredible.
Ooh, that's one that I really want to get. I loved reading the book, but I hear that the audio
audiobook's
is
amazing.
fantastic.
It's got Mark Hamill and Henry Rollins on it, and it's incredible.
Whoa. The Martian's a good audiobook as well.
What's that?
The Martian is an awesome audiobook as well.
The Martian? I don't know.
The Martian, yeah. That's a good one. Hey, what's the hardest part about doing shows?
The hardest part about doing shows, probably not getting to walk the floor as much as I'd like. I miss kind of just going to Comic-Con. Now I get I always show up a good half an hour beforehand and try to grab some books and then try to walk around for an hour. But as far as I find most of it pretty fun. I mean, the travel can be a little stressful and stuff like that, but it's all part of it. So maybe driving. Not a fan of driving, and we'd have to drive 10 hours to Utah. It's a little bit of a boring drive. But when we get there, I really would just rather go screw around and talk to artists. And sometimes you're trapped in this, which is not a bad place to be trapped. But I do wish that I had, I kind of wish there was an extra preview night just for artists to screw around. but then all the artists would have to be at their table anyway. So
Yeah.
we need to get like volunteers to just stand by our stuff.
Still doesn't work.
We're all on the honor system tonight, boys.
Yeah. So yeah.
Leave
All
your money on the
tables will
table.
not be manned because we're all screwing around. But,
So you've been doing, since I've been doing shows with you, I think you're mostly vending in a 10 by 10 corner,
typically.
and you're doing mostly flying shows, since, as you said, you don't like driving.
Mostly what shows?
Flying, like you'll fly in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of like the threshold is about like 8 or 9 hours, because at that point, anything longer than that, Cecil, my wife, doesn't drive, so I'm driving the whole time. So like Utah got to a point where, where I was like, dear God, please let us stop. And I think on the trip back, we took a nap by like a rest stop, and so at a certain point, you're like, you know what, I would pay $200 to not have to do this, like not drive. And with, like gas adds up, and hotels, if you need hotels, that adds up. So we figured, like, instead of driving, 13 hours to Seattle, we can get most of our stock there and luggage, and take a flight, and the flights are like $150, so it's just kind of easier. But
Yeah,
plus,
you
planes
travel.
are fun.
You travel lighter than Daniel and I travel.
Yeah, generally. But
Yeah.
that may change, but
Yeah, I mean, ties work great for that. T-shirts are probably harder.
a little bit. The worst part is books. We've been doing more hardcover books. Most of our books before this, before Coffee Creatures, and then the new one coming up, have been soft covers, which are really light.
Yeah.
But Coffee Creatures from last year is about 2 pounds per book. And then so the next one will be about the same. So yeah, a dozen books is 25 pounds roughly, and so you can't really carry that on a plane, and so shipping it, you can do medium mail, but yeah, so I'm debating now how much, because I think I'm going to need to bring like 100 of them, to come to like Emerald City, and so yeah, that's like, yeah. It's a lot of weight to try to fit in your carry-on,
Yeah.
Yeah. We're making the transition to driving to Emerald City this year.
Well,
Because-
caravan.
There you go.
Carpool.
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 Just get a semi, and some pallets.
Well, then once we got the semi, then we can just take the show on tour.
Well, we've talked about getting like an RV, and just load up the back of an RV, and because Denver and Phoenix this year.
You're right.
Where is
Literally back to back.
Yeah, it's Denver's on Monday, so I'll be flying back Tuesday, and then Phoenix starts on Thursday, so I'll be flying out Wednesday. So I'm basically flying home and flying out, and back to back, and that just seems crazy. And so I'm like, I could try, but I think Denver's like 16 hours or something.
Maybe you can squeeze into the wheel well of the Vanator and.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Yes, you could.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know. We have to drive for most everything because we're trying to bring a ton of stock. Seattle's a whole different problem, where we keep a lot of product just cached up there. So in a display cached up there with some friends, which is okay, but still, it's a huge pain in the butt. But yeah, I don't know. I'd like to drive to Seattle, but it's a 700-hour drive from our place in Arizona.
Yeah, your display alone is too much to. We're pretty much on like vinyl banners at this point, so we've been thinking about expanding. When we drive, we expand. We have a nice 15-foot display, but yeah, when we fly, it's minimal.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever get self-conscious? Well, I guess Daniel, you got your name really huge when you're like designing your promotional stuff, and you have to get a steam crow that's like 8 feet wide, and you're like, this feels a little cocky.
I don't have that problem. Cody. I don't have that problem at all.
I always feel like I don't know.
Well, are you doing a banner that says Cody Vrosh, or are you doing a banner that says Binary Winter?
I am doing a banner that says Cody Vrosh.
See, now that's the difference. Daniel and I both have business names.
Yeah,
so
well, we do have banners that say Binary Winter Press too, but then
Sure.
there's
But it's only like
there's
6
one
inches
set
high,
that's
though.
like-
right.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah, it's because
we've got
Cody's
new-
got that in his contract that he gets above the title.
We've got new Cody Vrosh banners that are like I think 12 feet high, and so the Cody Vrosh is a good like 3 or 4 feet, and it feels really cocky, and I'm kind of uncomfortable with.
Just go with it.
I like to be a little more humble, but
Nah.
I guess in terms of banners, I feel horribly.
Yeah, I don't know how I would feel about putting my name on something that, in that sense.
Yeah.
I'm not denouncing the doing of it. I just don't know how I'd respond to it.
I am.
Because I've always worked under a title of some sort.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, me too. My name's Dan Davis, so that's freaking boring as heck. So, yeah, let's get that out of the way.
And I'm always jealous when guys have like, there's guys like Sugar Fueled, and that have really good like stage names. And Steam Crow, it's a great stage name.
I think Vrosh is pretty great. It sounds like you're like a...
Like Vrosh. Should I just add a couple O's? Just be Vrosh.
Yes. Like you eat flesh, you're up on a mountaintop eating goat flesh.
Vrosh.
Vrosh. They came from the land of Vrosh.
But the Cody does kind of temper that a little bit.
It does.
See, now I feel like I'm going to blush. See, I've got banners with my name on it all giant. And I'm all...
Is your face on the banner? Like if your face is on the banner,
Yes,
high,
yes.
That's what you
I have a mugshot, just giant mugshot.
Straight
but
from the
instead of
driver license.
numbers, it says our URL.
It's an inflatable torso.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like one of those wavy arm guys.
Yeah.
Except with my visage. My terrifying visage.
Somebody has got to try that at a con at some point.
I'm sure they will.
Big head guy.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
He's pacing himself.
Yeah, water this time. I told you, this is not all scotch. A little bit of ginger.
It's not all scotch, and he's an optimist.
Yeah. Yeah. The glass is half full of scotch.
So I want to talk about the Kickstarter stuff because this interests me. I have yet to do a Kickstarter, but what was your first Kickstarter, and what was your experience like getting into it, and how has that changed? Because you've done a number of Kickstarters now, correct?
Oh, we've done two.
Two.
And I've got plans for more, but we're working out the details on those. So the original one, we wanted to do our first like big hardcover, and to do a run of hardcover books gets really expensive, and so we didn't want to take the brunt of that expense on ourselves. And we have several friends that have done Kickstarters and thought it might be a good outlet. And so we did a Kickstarter for Coffee Creatures, which is a collection of my paintings in coffee and watercolor. And the reception was really good. I kind of lowballed it. I was like, well, the original goal was $3,500, and I was like, well, if nothing else, that'll pay for like half the printing. And I'm sure as Daniel found out, like when shipping charges come into play, and Amazon and Kickstarter fees come into play, like it ends up being the money you actually get is probably like maybe 60 or 70% after everything, like extras and rewards and all that stuff. But it ended up going over and ended up being funded at like 250%. So I was able to pay for all the books and all the rewards and shipping, and so that worked out great. And then this last year, just a few months ago, we wanted to do another hardcover book, which was the Android's Astrological Companion, which is a collection. It's like a hybrid art book and short fiction anthology. So we invited a bunch of our friends to write stories. And then I did 12 paintings based on the Zodiac featuring Android girls. And so we did a Kickstarter for that, and we put the original goal a little higher just so it would cover everything. We went over that again. And I think, once again, we're going to hit, use every single last penny. I might go over a little bit. So, the whole experience of Kickstarters, I really enjoy it just because, we, as artists, a lot of us work from home and we don't have interaction with a lot of people during these projects. So, if you work in an office and you have a big project and you're collaborating with a lot of different people, and for me and my wife, it's just us talking about things, and so there's no real any outside influence or, and so being able to like show people what you're doing as you work on it is kind of not just in like a promotional sense, but like in a collaborative, like, hey, let's all make a book together kind of way, and it's very rewarding. So I really enjoyed those, and I might do a new Kickstarter for maybe a print series, and we've got a book planned for next year. But right now we've got another 1,000 books showing up at the door in a couple months, so we need to make room in the garage before we start any more book Kickstarters. But yeah, you should do one. I really enjoy them. Do you see the oatmeals?
Well, yeah. And that actually brings up a really interesting thing, because what you're talking about there with the exploding kittens is the catch of doing Kickstarters is it's the social network. It's the ability to promote the Kickstarter itself. Yeah. And obviously something like oatmeal, the oatmeal has a massive following. So he has complete saturation of a market. So he can launch something and does fantastic. And it's an interesting thing where it's almost like the Hollywood scenario where if you've got a big enough budget, then you can do what you want to. And that middle ground, it's like if you have no budget and you're just scraping by and doing your own thing, nobody's telling you what to do. But once you need some money, then suddenly everything kind of gets lockstepped for a while until you get up to the the Christopher Nolan level where you get to then have control again. So I think the Kickstarter has kind of that same conundrum where you'll have a lot of people who can do a lot of really creative stuff, but they won't get any traction, and it's really difficult to launch something that requires like what you were dealing with, where you have a hard minimum. I was looking at that same thing. We're working on a project for Fezarama, and I had it was the first project that I thought I could do this as a Kickstarter. There's a minimum order. There's I'm gonna have to outlay a bunch of cash up front to do this. This is the kind of Kickstarter project. And then the problem became I don't have time for a Kickstarter. It's like that. I looked at it and went, oh, this would be great because I was like still trying to figure out if it's something we can do. And by the time I figured out, yes, we can do this. I found the supplier, the manufacturer who can do the product for me, and the turnaround time, and started getting that information and realized if I'm going to do it, I have to do it immediately. I can't wait to find out if there's an interest in it, so it's this like double-edged sword, and that's why it fascinates me when people have done it and then have done it again. Like it's not so much successfully doing a Kickstarter, but it's the idea of successfully doing a Kickstarter where you could then go and do a second Kickstarter. Becomes kind of the challenge because everyone seems to learn that same lesson, which is, oh God, it was successful, and now I have a whole bunch of stuff I have to ship, and I have all of these stretch goals that we reached, and I didn't take into consideration international, or like there's always these traps that are throughout the thing, and the slice of Amazon and Kickstarter and
not only that, but we have the added problem of having a con season that's fairly robust, right? So there's not a lot of time. So when I look at the calendar, I'm looking at these gaps, and I'm like, well, I can't do the Kickstarter during that gap. I've got to do it before the gap, so I have the gap to fulfill.
Right. And it's in our case, it was the con season that was a hard deadline. Like, I need, I'm developing a product. I want to take this product with me to the cons.
Right.
I don't want to wait another year. I have a 3-month turnaround on manufacturing, which would get me just barely at the beginning of my con season if I say yes now. Whereas if I just waited if I did a short Kickstarter, I would have missed that window. And on top of that, you have to consider when are you going to launch a Kickstarter. Again, if you've got a really deep audience, you can launch year-round. But if it's something, there's times where depending on what you're trying to sell and when it's going to be delivered, you have to think about what you're making, what else is going on. Like, you don't want to launch a
Yeah.
Kickstarter the day after Christmas.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of things to consider.
You never know. Some of those times are really good, actually, for people that didn't get what they wanted for Christmas.
This is true.
But on our first Kickstarter for Copper Creatures, like, I was using the con season as a way to promote, because I was just terrified. I mean, everyone who launches their first Kickstarter is like, "What if I don't make it?" You know, and
Right.
you feel like you're gonna look stupid, and then
Right.
And does that mean that nobody loves me or wants my art? And
Right.
and so I launched it with Phoenix and Denver and Maker Faire within this period of it, but I was funded like the first weekend, which is great news. Except now I don't have updates or any other material or any other, I don't know what stretch goals were. I was shooting for that 3,500 and like didn't know what was beyond that. So as I'm like, selling stuff at Phoenix, I'm drawing new commissions and new pieces for the book, trying to make new material to promote the Kickstarter with, and that became a bit of a beast, just trying to, write updates and keep everything updated, and make it, worthwhile for people to keep contributing. So, so for the Android's Astrological Companion, we had pre-written a lot of stuff, so we had stuff prepared for stretch goals depending on where we landed, and we were able to put those out fairly easily as it went on. It was also during October, so it wasn't as bad November, sometime. And so the con season wasn't that bad, but I think it's a really good idea to have things like that prepared, so that you can update once a week and keep people informed and involved. Or else, because you could have I mean, at this point, like the oatmeal, Exploding Kittens, you've got this huge thing that, I don't know how they're going to fill all that, and the amount of games they're going to have to order in itself. I mean, you hear horror stories about Kickstarter where people didn't quite have their comic book finished and weren't able to finish it, and then had to move, or some calamity happened and they had to use the Kickstarter money for that. Now they can't fulfill their Kickstarters, and so now they're bankrupt trying to, and so it's good to plan ahead. Have as much material as you can just done, and just need, like as I think talking to you about it a little bit, Jason, you already, have pretty much everything ready, but you just need to gauge interest and need to gauge how much money people are willing to give you for it, which is a pretty good place to be,
Yeah.
We had
Did you find that?
For Android's Astrological Companion, we had like all the art was done before the Kickstarter started, and most of the stories were in too. So we had the book pretty much finalized, and then we had some printing issues and had to switch printers, and so I had to reformat everything. But like there wasn't anything that I was like stressing to work on during it, which was a relief in comparison to Coffee Creatures.
Yeah, I kind of find the process, the stress is, if you're going to get that funding. We funded really fast with ours as well, so that took a lot of the stress off, but it's still sort of a stressful thing. I don't know if it's just me being a stressful person, but the whole thing, it's just kind of a stressful thing, and you've got to answer people, and then, for us, it's the same thing. We funded in like a day, and then we had to come up with stretch goals. I thought I'd have like a week to like figure out a few more, but, it was just like, oh.
Well, there's also a weird like psychological little aspects that come into play where, like the first few days you wake up to like a bunch of new pledges and you're like, yay, people love me, but you hit that like 2-week slump and you're not getting pledges anymore, and you're like, why don't people love me now anymore?
Yes.
And every once in a while you'll get like somebody that cancels their pledge, and usually it's just because rent is due or whatever, but it's just like stab in the belly where you're like, why did you love me, but now you know. And so it's this really ridiculous thing that your brain does that that it's hard to, when you're caught in the thick of it, it's hard to step outside and take it for what it is. Yeah.
And I suspect that is an issue that scales. So regardless of how big the Kickstarter is, it's still like you're still fixated on that idea of, it's funded 300%, but today nobody's interested in it.
Right. It's successful, but not today.
Yeah, like it's successful, but you want it to be more successful-ish.
Right.
And,
Well,
yeah.
you want the line to go like this. It's the peaks and valleys issue
Yeah.
where it's fantastic when it looks like it's an airplane taking off, but when it's hitting turbulence, that's where the mental stress is created.
Or and I always feel bad for like I saw other Kickstarters during our Kickstarters take off and some fail, and so you get perspective through that. But I know like what the 19XX launched Kickstarter this last week.
Yeah.
Right, and I think they launched on the same day as the Oatmeal, which I think the 19XX is doing well. Like they're doing great, but if I'm sure I would be comparing myself to the Oatmeal right now, just like why isn't it that though?
Well, and that's the thing is that you can't because it's intrinsically different. Whereas he's got it's hard to really categorize, but it's more like he's like Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
For example, it's like I'm on a wait list to get into San Diego Comic-Con, but Stephen Colbert can get a 10x20 just by snapping his fingers. And part of me is like, this is why artists can't be at Comic-Con. But the other part of me is like, oh, bitchin', Stephen Colbert's at Comic-Con. I can't wait to watch the episode. So, it's like, so you have that kind of that difference. Because anytime you see something that goes viral, right? So it's like you'll see, like, YouTube stars. There's this guy's a YouTube star. What makes him so special? And it's like, well, he's got an audience. And the audience isn't necessarily the same thing as the art, and the art isn't the same thing as the audience. So when you go into Kickstarter, you're dealing with an audience beyond an appreciation for art.
Yeah.
And, it's like that won't be the greatest artist doing a Kickstarter. That won't be the greatest game doing a Kickstarter. That won't be the biggest celebrity doing a Kickstarter. Like there's all these different ways of measuring that stuff. And it's easy as an individual to try to measure yourself on somebody else's terms.
Yeah.
And, like, oh, my Kickstarter's not going as big as a celebrity's Kickstarter is going.
But my bologna sandwich tastes just as good as his.
It's true.
Unless he does a bologna sandwich Kickstarter, and then you'll have...
That's true. Then it sucks.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's like Kickstarters for foods after that one guy that did the Kickstarter for...
the potato salad?
Yes. And then immediately after there was like Kickstarter for tacos, and you're like, no, you didn't do it. You did it first.
Too late.
And that's the thing. It becomes one of those people will jump on, not bandwagon, I think that's the wrong term, but people jump on because it is in front of their faces.
Yeah.
So, it literally goes viral because somebody, I saw it in one of my RSS feeds, paid no attention to it. Got the notice that one of the people that I follow on Kickstarter, one of my friends, backed it and paid no attention to it. And then, hit the record opening news feed, hit my news feed. Because I'm on one of my RSS feeds will show me just new projects on Kickstarter. And occasionally I'll read one or two. So it's like and it's just from that perspective, it's like I have an RSS feed of webcomics that the Oatmeal is on, and I don't necessarily tune into that every day. So it's like I had all these outlets to be aware of it, but I really didn't know. I didn't have any context for it until it was the biggest, like the fastest funded project ever.
Yeah.
And
well,
that's
awesome.
the news story I saw.
I mean, he's awesome, and I'm a fan, and just his own personal viewpoints and what he tries to do, like with Tesla and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
hell yeah.
So if anyone's going to become a millionaire off a game on Kickstarter, like, cool. I'm cool with that.
But again, if you do the math, like we were talking about earlier, just getting funded for $1 million on Kickstarter does not mean you're a millionaire.
Yeah.
Because we don't know how much, you still have to consider how much it's going to cost him to ship, how much it's going to cost him to store. you
How
know,
many interns will be required to ship all those packages?
yeah. So it's
not only that, but the pressure on him to put out great stretch goals.
Yeah.
That can really get you into trouble pretty quick. Like, oh well, we've got 2.4 million. What's the big deal? Let's give them funny hats. But
Yeah.
that really that can mess stuff up pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those things that as the backers, we're always like, oh yeah, by all means, give everybody that bonus item. But that bonus item is eating into the operating costs.
Well, that's like for Coffee Creatures, I did. You could get a book. I was also doing 11x14 prints, and then as stretch goals, I was doing 5x7 like hard, like thick paper stock prints. And so I'm shipping the books media mail. I'm shipping the prints rolled, and then I had to ship the rewards too. So I ended up having to ship all 3 of them separately.
Oh man.
So I mean that was just the cheapest way to do it. So yeah, I ended up sending the postcards like in just an envelope by itself along with it. So that was one of those things. Like on this one, we did 2 books. So the stretch goal was you get a free another book, but then we can ship both those media mail. And so yeah, it's those little things that you don't really consider. You're like, yeah, we'll give people free prints, and you're like, oh wait, we can't ship those together, or else we have to ship everything priority. And yeah, so.
Ouch. Yeah,
so I'm sure his shipping fees are going to be murder. I'm sure he's going to get that like PayPal bill. Like, dude.
That's the thing that jumps into my head.
PayPal this month.
Yeah, that's the thing that jumps into my head when I see these $1 million funded is the slice that that Kickstarter takes out, and now they're working with Stripe to do their processing instead of Amazon, I believe. But still, I mean, like you're when you see $1 million funded on a project, that's a large number that Kickstarter gets.
Yeah, 240,000 on this one currently.
Yeah,
on his.
And you can argue that, well, Kickstarter is where you get the exposure, but when you're talking about someone like the Oatmeal gets the exposure the Oatmeal needs on the Oatmeal. Like right. Kickstarter is not bigger than the Oatmeal. So because he could have easily done, crowdfund, Indiegogo, like he could have gone on any of them. He didn't need the legitimacy of Kickstarter to do what he does. He could have just paid for a plugin and dropped it on a WordPress site and just done it that way and spent, I assume less money. But it's just one of those interesting things that that I think about when I see these huge successes is how that plays out. And that's one of the reasons, like, people ask, do I have an Etsy store? And it's like, well, I started the business really before Etsy was well known, and we've been running our own website the entire time. So I'll look at these shopping sites going, it'd be nice not to have to deal with the back-end hassles of upgrades and compatibility and all that kind of stuff. And then I look at the numbers of, the operating costs of the subscription fees or whatever that the store systems are charging, and goes right back to, what, I think I'll tinker with it myself.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of research because I'd love to be able to use crowdfunding in a very micro scale, like a very small scale crowdfunding, instead of funding a large project. More like being able to fund a project on the small scale, like what I'm doing, like, oh, hey, I've got this design concept. I don't know if it'd be very popular. And currently I can do that just by, posting concepts up on Twitter or on Facebook to see people's responses. But those aren't legitimate responses. Like, there's no barrier of entry of hitting a like button or a plus button. As opposed to, like, here's some cash, I'll back the development of this project.
Yeah, I think of it as like participatory pre-ordering, because for the most part, everyone's like pre-ordering our book. Right. But you're offering them extra goodies, and you're offering to have them be involved in the kind of creation process, which I find it fascinating. Like, I've actually learned a great deal from other people's Kickstarters. Seeing like you know, like there was just a mouse guard one for little mice heads that you fit on Lego Man, and which will be great for mouse guard role playing. Um, but in there talking about the whole process of getting them manufactured, and so it's very interesting. And like Jason Brubaker from Remind, he's very open about the whole process of how it works, and how much getting his books printed were, and he actually goes with Region, which is our printer too. But so the whole process is very interesting to me. So I mean, that's why I enjoy doing Kickstarters, and that's why I try to make it as much an experience as people can have when we're doing them. You know.
And I do think that, like you said earlier, I do think that is the special part of it as an artist, to be able to get that collaborative, environment that you have when you're not working in a collaborative, like when we're not in an office, we're in our home studios, staring at the same walls every day with very few people mixing it up. So it's an interesting aspect to it that you're opening yourself up and exposing yourself as an artist, but it's a two-way street, and that there's some give and take on it. I've helped other artists in their Kickstarters, and I've put, I've made incentives for their projects, but I've never run one on my end.
Yeah, that's a fun process. I mean, if you want to know anything, I'll let you know. We have spreadsheets and all that good stuff.
Pie charts. Spreadsheets.
Pie charts. Yeah, no, I think you should do it. It's fun. I highly recommend it. I mean, I always look at things as like, you can look at things in terms of like business or sales or popularity, or how much attention is this getting me, or how much am I going to enjoy the process doing it. And I think most of us chose this kind of lifestyle not because we think we could make good money at conventions, but because, oh my God, these conventions are awesome, and I should be on the other side of that table, and and I want to participate in this as much as humanly possible. And so Kickstarter is just, it's like the convention of the internet. It's this weird participatory thing where you get to communicate with fans on a really regular basis. Even like I love Instagram, but it's very much like, here's the thing, and you get reactions, and I love that kind of interaction, but it's and that's it. It's like that day's post. And then
it's short format.
And so there's no real like long-term project-based things, and so that's what Kickstarter's for. I kind of wish there was like a non-financial Kickstarter where you could just talk about weird projects. I mean, I guess that'd be a blog or something, but
that's probably a blog.
I guess I could just start a blog.
Yeah, but when you stop doing the blog in the halfway through, you don't have a bunch of people yelling at you.
True.
Damn you, Cody Vrosh.
Then don't stop.
Well, I do want to that we're coming to the end of a reasonable time for our Kickstarter group therapy session here. So definitely want to thank you very much for joining us tonight and giving us your insights and your optimistic attitude.
Thank you for having me. Anytime.
Yeah, thank you.
Any excuse to drink with friends.
Yeah, through the internet.
Yeah.
So where can just remind us where people can find you on the interwebs?
Deep breath. So you can find my art at codyvrosh.com. You can find the shirts and ties and books at binarywinter.com. We've also got stores on Etsy and Store NB, Binary Winter and Cody Vrosh. You can also find me on most of the major social networks, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, all as Cody Vrosh. And yeah, I use all those in different capacities for showing new works and finished pieces and updates on art shows and conventions.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Daniel, where can the people find you on the internet?
So you can find us at steamcrow.com, Facebook Steamcrow, Twitter Steamcrow, Google Plus, I don't know, Steamcrow or something. So dig around, you'll find us. Just Google it. That's the best way. And how about you, Jason Rodgers of the team?
As usual, I'm at Fezorama.com. You can find me on the Twitter as Fezmonger and Instagram as Fezmonger. And then, of course, the Google Plus and the Facebook. So, again, want to thank everyone who tunes in to watch these things as we go through. Please, if you have any questions or any comments or any suggestions, drop them in the comments section below the videos. And we are going to try to make this a semi-regular thing. We're going to mix it up with interviews, panels, and then also topic shows. So I think our next, we're probably going to try to do a topic show next to try to cycle through all of these before things get really hairy with the convention season in a couple months. So thank you for tuning in, and hopefully you will join us again. Any last words, Daniel?
Thank you, and thank you to Cody. You're awesome.
Yep. Thanks, Cody. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.